Welcome, everybody, to Generation Dan, the podcast where one of the three of us has our hand down our pants and you don't know who it's going to be. The podcast of generational differences. I'm Atlas Novak. I'm your millennial. Who else is here with me?
I'm Dina, the genetic marvel. I am your old disgruntled person with two hands in the air. So,
Greg. Okay, that I was. Yeah, I mean, I thought it would take at least 10 seconds to get a hands outside of the sight of vision joke, but no, that woke me up in a way that falling back has not. So. I'm awake now, boys. Thank you.
This is Greg Benevent. How are you, man?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing good. I worked out. I had some caffeine. I think I'm ready for this. Thanks for having me on it. It took me a second to get the hang of StreamYard, but I'm here. I'm streaming yard. Yeah,
that is fair. That's it's one of those things where we've had multiple people. They're like, I don't know what's happening. Suddenly their internet goes out and I'm like, you know what? Hilariously, I work with some friends in Ohio and they do one podcast that is a little more aggressive, let's call it. So it's more current events related and stuff. And immediately,
is this hammered in cheese or something else?
Huh?
Oh.
Is this hammered in cheese or which one?
No. It's with Marco on Upside Down Studios. And they'll bring up subjects and immediately their internet goes on the fritz. And I'm like, whoa, that is some messed up stuff, to the point where we started to mess with it and like certain names we can't use. And I'm like, that is some weird stuff. But
wow, that's how ghost stories start in the new generation.
I'm saying, I can't say there aren't ghosts. I just can't prove that there are ghosts. And
gotcha.
It's just one of those things. And for all the AI watching us, we love our new robot overlords. And
no. It's sure that AI is definitely not.
They can't do worse. They can't do worse, Greg. It's just come on.
Let's go with that. That'll be. We're a couple years out from them picking up sarcasm.
That's fair. So, the subject for today is boredom.
Okay.
You know what? I am jealous of you guys because you guys get a little more sunshine and a little more access to the outside. I'm in Canada, Greg. So,
where in Canada are you, Dana?
I'm in Toronto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Cool. So for me, it's getting to like, if I wasn't 6'2" and built like a land monster, I'm like, I would stay inside more often. For me, I'm like, the cold. I just have to hope I don't get shot as a Yeti in the mist, which is fine. But in general, it's one of those things where I find that being stuck indoors, especially after the last few years, like you had to figure that out. Otherwise, the boredom just takes over and you're like, now I'm just a dick, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't know, but like you guys, because you guys like it, what's the worst during the wintertime that the temperature will go down to? Like 60?
Oh, I've seen 30s in certain November nights. I mean, and the other part of it, I mean, I grew up in Western Pennsylvania in the Pittsburgh area, and
so you know,
yeah, absolutely. So I know cold, but that's sort of where I'm going with. What I didn't realize I knew at the time was I also knew humidity, which we do not have in Southern California. I mean, I do not react well to cold now below 50. I dress like I used to go out and play roller hockey with my friends after Thanksgiving growing up, and the same layering, just because that when the temperature, when the bottom falls out of the temperature, when the night in the desert, it falls out. I mean, 55 here is feels like 38 in Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay. So when we complain about it being in the 50s and people are like, yeah, you don't know, the lack of humidity is doing most of the heavy lifting.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm going with. You didn't ask me to come
I don't know.
As a meteorologist, but that makes sense. That makes sense because I know my body. I know I'm cold at 50, and I know I'm cold at 31 when I go home to visit my mom at Christmas. Like it's. I know what those two things feel the same. So it can't just be, I'm a wimp over there, but I'm tough in this part of the country. That doesn't make sense.
Now, granted, I've been like, I grew up skiing a lot, and then
Okay, I did not.
just like going to cold places and having the proper like clothing for it. I still like it.
Yeah.
Like when I went to go do stand up in Cleveland with Cole and all that and Marco and all them, I have this like leather jacket that I never get to wear that I was happy to wear. Then like just stuff like that. I was like, finally, I'm comfortable. Like jacket, beanie, I'm good. Like I don't.
Right. And I think there's. Oh, I'm sorry. No,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think there's something too in what Atlas just said about, wearing the leather jacket, wearing the beanie, and that the preparation. Okay, I'm going to Cleveland. It's cold. It's night. It's a winter. I'm wearing these layers. Where Los Angeles, you're like, okay, it's 70 degrees this morning. Oh God, it's 52 at night, and I'm still wearing the same shorts I did to the gym. Like,
it's like 50 in the morning and 80 in the afternoon, and you're like,
also as a PSA to everyone, they should know if you like seeing a man in a tank top, check out Greg's Facebook. I was looking for thumbnails, lots of tank top wearing, so that's
it took a long time to get there. That's and two. That's sort of where when I saw the topic was boredom, I was like, well, we're going to get to working out eventually, so I might as well come in character. But yes,
hilariously for me, so I've currently lost 240 pounds.
Wow, that's great. This is one of the few times I've ever with somebody that lost more weight than me. That's fantastic.
It's been a wild experience, and I'm like, so the weird part is that I'm like, this is my first winter where I'm 260 pounds, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Like, it's very confusing. But also, like, I can now buy clothes at a normal store. Like, I bought 2 pairs of jeans from Costco, and I'm like, they're not even stretchy. It's so amazing, And but like that's the thing. So last year, so it's been a couple years where it's been hammering down. So last October, so originally I was 500 pounds. Last October I was 400 pounds, and now I'm at 260.
Hey,
and so last winter my wife actually bought me snow pants, which I'm like, I haven't fit in snow pants since I was like 6. So I'm like, these are amazing. I'm like, everyone should get snow pants over the winter, right? So it's one of those things, like, and also too, like even right now, I've been working a Halloween event for the entire month, and it's been outside because it's like a Halloween village. It's a really cool experience, and I made my own character, and it was great. But
so cool.
It really was. The weird part was that while the sun was up, we would have it would get hot, and then I'm in character, and I'm wearing. So what I did was I just piled on layers of my old clothes, and I'm like, I gotta use them for something.
That's what they're there for. You earned that. You earned that. That is your right.
The funny thing is, so I'm wearing it, and I'm like, oh man, there's a lot of layers. I'm starting to get hot, and then the sun goes down. I'm like, I'm good. It's fine. This is perfect, And people would come up like, do you need hand warmers? So I'm like, oh, I'm still fat, so I'm okay. But like, it's also like only we had 2 nights where it got down to 0.
Oh, geez.
And then at the same point in time, I'm kind of like, I'm still okay. And I'm like, because I was wearing welder gloves and everything, so I'm like, it's just my face was a little bit cold, but I'm like, I got a big face. I'm okay with that. It's a reasonable experience. So
it should be noted that when he says 0, he means 0 Celsius, which is like the 30s first.
Oh yeah, no, that's what it's okay.
Yeah.
But that leads to exactly something I was going to ask him. So that's incredible, Gino. But Dino, I'm sorry, but it's just okay. So, but have you noticed since you've lost that weight, do you react to the cold differently now that you don't have that weight?
Hugely. So
there you go. Yeah,
I have only so in the last year. I started being comfortable in the heat. So I would actually take bets at like house parties of me putting my hand in like the beer tub for like a minute and a half, and I'm like, I don't feel shit. And I'm like, no problem, right? I couldn't do it with my left, but my right, I would just put it in there, and I'm like, nah, you got nothing. And I would just stay in there. And even like I would walk around because I used to work downtown Toronto.
Gotcha.
I used to be a real person. It was
I've heard stories about myself. Yeah, that's
the work. So I would have so my wife actually is a clothing designer, and she works for an outerwear company, and so it's a big puffy jacket. It's very nice, but I'm like, also they don't make my size, so I'm like, I had a smaller size, and I was also getting fatter, so I would have my stomach just sticking out, and I'm like, still not cold. But then I would get inside, I would touch my belly. I'm like, I think my belly's frozen solid. It's so cold, right? So it's been this whole, it's been a weird transition where I'm like, cold. I'm like, I've never worried about cold. And now I'm like, I don't really know what to expect. So I'm like, we had a couple nights at 0 degrees Celsius. And I was like, you know what? It's okay. It's not that bad. But then like I've been taking really hot showers and stuff. Okay. And then I'm like, during the summer, I'm like, people were like, oh, it's so hot. I'm like, this is great. I'm like, I don't know. Like I've mastered after being 500 pounds, you kind of mastered the art of not moving, which has come in extremely handy during the Halloween event. Cause I would just stand there and looking at people and they're like, he's not moving. He's not blinking. Is that a real person? And I'm like, and they're like, what the hell? Right. So it's this weird thing where people are like, it's so hot. I'm like, try not moving. It's not hard. Just kind of chill out and just don't move. I'm like, listen, when you're 500 pounds, any movement, regardless of the season, is going to create issues. You just kind of, it's a whole learning process. So now I'm just like, you want to go for a walk? And I'm like, sure, it's great outside. I'm like, I have no problem. But yeah, that has been one weird thing through it, is the transition of being okay with cold to being okay with hot. And I'm like,
gotcha.
This weather is fantastic. People are like, it's so hot. I'm like, it's great. Try adding 200 pounds of fat. It's much worse. So.
Oh yeah, no. You're better off with the Gore-Tex coat. Yeah, a little easier to take off.
How much, Greg? You said Dino lost more weight than you. How much did you lose?
At best I could put together, I lost 150. I was somewhere. I was.
That's awesome.
There was a time in my life, and I think you have to go pretty far back, farther than you did, Dino, to find those pictures. But it was there was a time I remember stepping on the scale in college, and it was at 299, and I remember like stepping off of it in like the way like in the movie when the hero runs from the explosion with the gun, like that same level of like, we're getting out of here. So I mean, I've been anywhere, and now recently when I weigh myself, but it's not often. I wear between 151 and 165, just in terms of, because frankly muscle now, and it's the best decision you've ever made. I'm assuming up there, Dino. It's got to be up there. Yeah.
A wife is first. She's great.
You'll notice I caught myself for a second. I'm not married, so I was like, wait, I have to adjust this for my crowd. Yes.
Yeah. She'll kill me in my sleep. It's fine. I gotta keep her at the top. But it's one of those things where like on some level, like this past year I turned 43, and I'm like, I'm not like, I've always been a big guy. So like you said 299 and you were like, whoa. And I'm like, oh, I was 330 in high school, and I was like, I was a brick shithouse, and I'm like, nah, I'm good.
But I'm like 5'7", dude. I'm 6'2". Like,
that's a whole. You were. So that's the way. I'm like at 500. I'm like, I was one circle, and now I'm a lot of little circles. I'm okay. That's fine. It's definitely like, that's the hilarious part of it. I'm like, I always had the comfort of like when I walked around, and I show pictures to people because I'm like, I brag about it all the time because I'm like, I'm amazing. You should see what I've done. You know?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And hilariously, like I'll show them a picture. They're like, get the hell out of here. And I'm like, it's pretty awesome. But also like now it's funny that you mentioned earlier about the lack of humidity. I'm like, my joints don't hurt as much, but at the same time, like, it started raining a couple nights, and I'm like, oh, I start feeling in the knees and everything. I'm like, oh, God, I need to go to a desert for a little while. Enjoy the winter. It's a dry heat.
That's why snowbirds do that.
Yeah,
I thought it was just because of the temperature. I didn't think about the humidity part.
Oh, it's a total. Yeah, I think it's a big group package kind of to do.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I always joke about being the world's first reverse snowbird just because I hate the heat so much. Like during May through like September, I'll just go to Australia and then go to the other hemisphere. Just for
don't go to Australia. That is just all criminals and things that want to kill you. That's
in the 1860s.
I don't know. Listen, every cuisine.
Oh, mate, you want to become an Australian citizen? Are you still a criminal? Like that's not.
Yes. Have you met those people? They are wild. Shout out to Australia. You guys are killing it. My wife has also been like, don't you have like distant family in Australia? I'm like, yeah, but I'm not gonna go there. I'm like, everything is trying to kill me, and now I'm not very smart. I'm like, I will fight an animal. I'm like, I don't know. They're all poisonous or venomous. I'm like, no,
funnel web spiders, like, I'm fucking coming for your ass.
yeah, exactly. And I'm like, oh, you have to check your shoes. I'm like, let's just stop there, okay? I only recently learned to bend down to put on shoes. Let's not start an investigation. That's a lot, you know.
Well, okay, so in the winter, for centuries and centuries, humanity has learned to survive while being stuck inside with the cold, and you know, they tell stories and things like that. So during the winter, like growing up or otherwise, how do you guys like keep sane? Because I know, you know, seasonal depression and all that stuff.
You know what? That's a fair question. Because for us, like this past year, I'll be honest with you, was the first time I ever went tubing, and it was you go really fast, and I was like when I was younger, I would go skiing, and I'm like, then I got to a size where I was like, if I fall, I'm dying here because they won't go up the hill to get me. I'm like, and then I have to start hunting things, and just like I'm stuck here, and I just like, don't move, grab a rabbit. It's like that's not gonna work, right? So
if I fall, I become one of those cartoon snowballs where it gets bigger.
Oh, and bigger. Yeah, right. You are the avalanche.
100%. And I'm like, yeah. So you're like, you want to go tobogganing? And I'm like, that's not. I become a rocket ship at high speeds. It's not like it's out of control. You can't stop it. So
even though you've lost 1.5 pounds of weight, that's still a lot of weight. So like tubing must be amazing because the more weight you
aerodynamic, like just the feel. Yeah.
Honestly, I even I did a bunch of reels on my YouTube channel while I was doing it. And I'm like, hey, can I record while doing this? They're like, yeah, but like careful. And I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. And then I'm like doing it. I'm like, okay, so we're doing this. This is the guy who's pulling it, and they'll like slingshot you down. And then you're going down a hill, and then and the funny thing is, like, there's the hill, and then there's a huge area, and then it goes up again to kind of stop you. And I'm like, that's a long stretch of no hill, and then going uphill. And I'm like, I feel like I have not considered how fast I can go. And sure enough, I'm like, I would consistently go to the top of the end of it, and people were like, oh, you went really fast. And I'm like, I have made a series of horrible mistakes. This is a horrible decision the whole time, because I'm like, it was way too fast. And you're spinning. It was very enjoyable. I think we're going to go again this year, but at the same time, it's just a good usage of the snow pants. So I'm like, hey,
love the idea of you're going down the hill and people are like, all right, waiting for my turn. You see like Dino rocketing by. And then just being like, I made a series of horrible mistakes.
That's exactly what I did.
As he comes into earshot and then comes out.
We have a lesser course. Is there a beginner one? I don't want that.
Yeah, it's definitely like doing things outside, I think, is the biggest thing. But like also like you can do one thing like a week. After that, you're like, no, I'm going to stay inside where there's warmth. I don't need just a little bit of enjoyment in that fashion, because it's also like it's a whole thing of just there's a lot of activity. And then like I like to go, like I'm old, so I'm like, I'll go early in the morning when there's nobody, and then by noon I'm like, all right, let's get the hell out of here. There's all sorts of people here. I'm not interested in that stuff.
Well, I also think time to recuperate too. I mean, you go outside, you're in that cold. I don't necessarily just mean off of age, just thinking like, okay, maybe someone's a little more introverted, maybe they're not. Those kind of outdoor public things that sort of takes a real toll, and you gotta bounce back a bit.
You know what? And that's a good point too, is like the tax, that the burden of constantly trying to make a joke out of everything, we all go through, right?
Yeah,
show with 3 comedians, fuck yeah,
right.
Listen,
I mean, it's
the whole so the whole Halloween experience. Like I had, hold on, I'll pull up a picture.
He was part of a haunted village.
I got that from the standing still and then looking at him thing. Whoa,
that was me. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. And I get it. I mean, that was scary.
So the funny thing was that like I'd be staring at people, and then they'd have to go between me through a narrow corridor. It was like me and a wall. And they're like, clever. Absolutely not. And the funny thing is, they'd get close, and I'm like, is there something on my face? Did I not? And they're just like, get me out of here. And then I would be like, oh, you guys don't want to hang out? What's up? And then other guys would like, when they were a little further away and they would see me, there was a barrier between us, and they'd be like, ooh, and then they'd realize they have to walk through me, and I'm like, oh, you're not so brave anymore? What happened? Is that not a thing? And they would lose their mind, and I'm like, nah, still got
great. And that's what they paid for. You were giving them the experience. You were doing the job.
Oh yeah.
Imagine if he was saying that in the scary voices they're walking by. I'm just giving you what you paid for.
Oh, I may have said that to
this
some
is
people.
capitalism.
Yeah.
I'm like, you paid for this.
Capitalism, the scariest force of all.
People would bring their kids in, and I'm like, oh, I ate a sandwich that looked like the little one. And they're just like, what the hell? And I'm like, no, come back, sandwich. I want a sandwich. And it's just, yeah, it's one of those things.
That's great.
I think it's fun. Greg, what do you do to cure the boredom of the winter months?
Well, I was interested. You guys were talking about boredom, and I was thinking, is how much does, I mean, maybe just speaking my own experience, how much does boredom still exist in the era with the phone? I mean, sometimes I and I've had this conversation with other artists, particularly folks outside of comedy, and that, you know, a little boredom isn't a bad thing. I mean, if boredom leads to daydreaming and leads to dreaming, that can be restorative versus, you know, and look, as I get older, and I don't know about this world and any of that, I would much rather prefer the moment of just sitting still for a minute and even just letting a little boredom creep into my body versus scrolling on this damn thing over and over and over again. That's better for you. There are, you know, I mean, before I even start, boredom is not necessarily good. I'm not saying that, but there are worse things than boredom, worse than a little bit.
100%.
Boredom, like drinking, only in moderation is fine. You know, if you can handle it, like, oh man. But I mean, what I do is you try to find some little thing you enjoy in the boredom that doesn't necessarily ruin everything. I mean, I'm very lucky. With my day job, I can work remote. So, I mean, it's in between the arts, the comedy, and acting and writing and everything else. There's boredom comes with it a guilt, a kind of regret, a sense of obligation to not be bored. And that's why I don't mean to proselytize for boredom or be a boredom advocate, but to let some of it into your life is a good thing. To have a little boredom is not bad, because in a way it can help to reset you. I don't know if any of that answers your question, but I think there is. But when you are too bored, I just, man, just try something that feels kind of okay to you. I think that's part of how I got into weight loss in the first place. You know, there's all this time to fill. And what I'm doing isn't making me happy with it. So, I mean, on a pure, most basic level, do something to change that a little bit. I mean, I'm sure, like you, I went through a million different things that didn't work. And it wasted time, but it's not the same wasted time as like I'm watching another show that I don't care about. Looking at some Lucas's videos, like you know. So I think that if you have that boredom and you have a, just use it to talk. Maybe use it to talk to yourself. Improve some of that self-talk. I mean, that's something I'm working on right now, and it's proved to be helpful. I'm not great at it yet, but I'm just talking over you guys. But you see what I'm saying? I think that's the little things you can do to alleviate or even lessen boredom. Like, okay, last thing is that I used to, years ago, my dad had a friend, lovely guy. He ran hurdles at Penn State. And I remember once he blew our minds because he told us Gatorade, when they would run hurdles, there'd be 1 part Gatorade and 4 parts water. So they wouldn't just drink the Gatorade. They'd have 4 parts of water to it. And maybe that's how you deal with boredom, as opposed to like, okay, 4 parts of boredom. We're just going to sit and power through this boredom. Put in a little of something else, cut it, see where it goes. Like,
okay. So, you know what, Greg, you brought up a lot of wicked points that I have been debating this entire time. So so the work thing is that there were a lot of younger people that they brought in. And I'm like, I feel like there's a certain amount of maturity that you need to embrace boredom or see the value of boredom.
Yes, I 100% agree.
So we would have times when it's like, so I was in a maze in a gas station. If you've seen, for people watching, if you've seen the movie, the television series Reacher, we used the same village. It was filmed just outside of Toronto, so they got that and they renovated everything and made mazes and stuff, really cool stuff. And one of the things was like sometimes there wouldn't be a lineup, so nobody's coming through. And within seconds, people would abandon their position, like their hiding spot, and be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Hey, man, go back to your spot." And they're like,
"You don't know."
Well, there's no one in line. I'm like, you're paid to be in that spot. Go be in the spot. Just look at the wall. I don't care. Just sit there.
Yes.
Yeah. And people are like, well, no one's here. I'm like, it doesn't matter if anyone's there. I'm like, just do nothing. You're being paid to do nothing. Do nothing. And like the funny thing was, like, I had this set up where I'll be honest, I moved stuff and I was like, so I could sit down because I'm old. And I was like, I want to sit down. So,
well, they don't want you. I mean, there's a difference between leaving your post and like making your post as inhospitable as possible.
Exactly. So I'm like, I would back up and just sit there and I could see people coming through in advance so I could get in position and everything. So I just sit there looking and people would come around the corner. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm waiting for people. I'm like, when I see people, I stand up and we'll go over there to my spot. And there's like, so you're just going to stand there and look through? I'm like, yeah, I'm paid pretty good just to sit here and wait for people to scare, which I'm like, honestly, has been wild because at 500 pounds, I had a whole, like, I've had to abandon so much material because, like, Fat Guy is great.
And that's a price you'll pay too.
It is a
trade-off. Yeah.
And I'm like, I did a bit where I'm like, listen, if I walked into a dark alley and saw myself, I'd piss my own pants. So, like, hilariously now where I'm scaring people, I'm like, I've definitely made a few people pee their pants, like, no question. I definitely made a few men jump into the air, which was glorious.
Oh, what a gift.
I seriously am taking credit because there are at least 2 people who definitely messed themselves up. And I'm like, to the point where, like, I was farting the whole time. Like, I was just cluster bombing the whole area. But, like, I smelled when I was like, did I crap my pants? Which, so you know, great. Me and Atlas have a debate ongoing where I'm like, adults don't crap their pants. And Atlas is like, it happens. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. You have to control yourself. So I was like, did I crap my own pants? And then I was like, oh no, it was that guy. That guy's like waddling away. And I'm like, so I was still got it. It's great.
I mean, like, okay, so one of my favorite things to do is to, my day job is I'm a teacher.
Okay.
Teacher. And I love to crop dust my classroom and watch my kids blame each other. Yeah, like
100%. Yeah.
What grade do you teach at?
For the core class, it's seniors, and then the creative writing, which is like an elective, it's all 4.
Okay, so it's not like third graders blaming each other. Like, these are people that are on their way to college. Like, I had to do a double take. All right,
you got to be careful, Alice, because eventually you'll let a loud one out, and then you'll be known as the teacher that farts, and you don't want that because that never dies. Yeah, be careful.
There's creative writing ways kids could find a way to say that too.
That's true. That's true. They could. If they were listening.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if they're paying attention.
If they're paying attention. Yeah. Okay. Here's the other thing is that this isn't me, but something I've noticed around the school is like, you know, they're putting up posters for like, oh, this club or like this spirit day, whatever the thing is. Every once in a while, I'm noticing that somebody is putting up, do you know the webcomic XKCD?
Yes. I mean, it's they're showing you the door. I mean, I've seen that panel how many hundreds of times. Yes.
Yeah. So they're putting up XKCD comics, like,
which are at this point at least a decade old, correct?
Yeah.
In many cases.
And I'm noticing like where they're putting them. It's always that's something that has to do vaguely where it's being put, the comic. So, like, for example, near the history teacher's room, there's like it's like a guy in front of 2 maps of North and South America, and one of them is the Panama Canal, the other one's like a canal going north to south through the whole thing. And then it's like that's near the history teacher's room, so it's like a history joke. And then outside of my room, there was like a thing about the Odyssey, and I'm an English teacher, and I'm like seeing math jokes outside the math teacher's room. And then like slowly it's slowly covering the school, and I'm wondering who it is and when they have the time to do this.
That is an origin story of like a supervillain, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's or someone else that could use our speech about diluting boredom.
I'm sure it's like a teacher.
Back a bit. Because one student, it's like, it's time to get the second English teacher tomorrow.
No. I don't think
XDD.
I don't think it's a student because it's a school with block periods, 4 block periods, and every teacher gets a conference period, one of those 4, which means that they are free to make copies, plan. If they have
Or
to have a meeting, they
shenanigans.
can do that.
I see it in service kind of thing. Do your own work. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah. So there is time for every teacher in the school at some point to be like, oh, it's in between class. I'm gonna put an extra.
I mean, but aren't you working on your lesson plans? You're talking to your partner? What on earth is this? But go around hang these things up. Do some stretches. What on earth? Like
the question is,
I find it's ridiculous. Like
the question is, do you start a war with that person and start trying to outdo them and get better comics and like put it right beside and be like, suck it, just mine's better.
I feel like the last thing this person needs is engagement. I think they need to.
Yeah, I'm one of those things because I'm also wondering
in hopes they wilt and pass off. But like that's bizarre. Okay, I mean that's just me. Maybe I've never done something in response to someone.
Also, the thing is, they're all kind of so nondescript that it just kind of blends in with the background.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering.
I was struggling with the North and South thing. Like it doesn't sound like it was again one of the ones the XKCD comics about like free speech or something like be about a contentious issue. It doesn't be like here's just an image.
Yeah,
like
or you can respond with like a Far Side comic that's also relevant and just be like, or even go worse, go Ziggy and just be like, hey, whatever, bro. Yeah.
There's
if you put up a family circus in response to somebody, they'd all be confused. They'd be like, what on earth? Billy's walked around this entire house. What does that have to do with my class?
Exactly.
There's a lot of stray cats that like are around the campus too. One of them put like one of the comments that was put up was a thing about cats. And it was like it's like a graph of like intelligence that like decreases the closer you are to a cat, and the inanity of your statements goes up the closer you are to a cat.
Oh, that's cute.
And then like you get closer, and then it's next to the cat, and it's you're a kitty. And then,
that's funny. I like that.
Yeah. So like,
I'm not sure I'd hang it up anywhere. But
but like that was near where where the cat, like the bush where the cat lives, and like
okay,
just shit like that where it's like it has to do with where it's being hung, and like I'm curious to see who the person is.
like that, you got to figure out, like, is it someone who is just like not being challenged, and they're like, I'll challenge myself. I'm just gonna find this random stuff and put it everywhere and see if anyone notices. Like, it's one of those things where like the worst thing you could do is probably engage, but at the same time, it may be hilarious. Like just like there's a 50-50 chance that you may make an enemy or partner in crime. I
mean, like, and I just want to piggyback on what Dino said, because that's so right. I think it depends on how, for lack of a better word, cool this person is. Like, if they're on top of everything in their life and they're smart, it's going fine, and it's just some fun thing they do on the side, then absolutely engage with it. If it's a person where it's like this is meaningful to them and they do it every day and all that, then stay away. Don't even treat them like you're the cat you're getting far from to get more intelligent. Yeah.
So it's either like, I'm trying to think of like a character that has all their shit together and none of them do.
Okay.
Ever.
I see.
Or it's either that, or on the other end of the spectrum, it's the Riddler from Batman. And
like the benign Riddler. Like
But what you could do is find something similar and start leaving it on people's desks. So it's like now you're framing them, and he's just like, well, you didn't want to know. Like, now it's everyone's problem. So you all have to work with me to find who this person is, which, I mean, I feel like that's what Batman would do. He's like, well, out-riddle the Riddler. That's how you do it.
And there is something, it's just what Tina's saying, there's something far more aggressive about you put it on their desk versus outside their door. Like, here, it's closer to you now. Like, where the comic is inside the room. Like,
but also, like, that means that you have to interact with that person, whereas all these being hung in the hallways and stuff, like, it could just be
I'm
like,
not touching you. I'm not touching you.
I'm not touching you, or just like it's more, it's easier to hide because it looks like you're just walking around with a piece of paper and then stick it to the wall and keep walking. And
again, this is a person that I would look for, someone who has their lesson plans the least organized in their class. This one's not using this in service time productively. That
100%.
You're finding a suspect. My word.
It could be one of two. Either the person that is not, or the person that is ultra organized, and they're like,
"Oh, hey,
I need to fill more time. I'm just too bored." Like like there's a certain amount of just like you get. Like, I always find myself at a point where I'm like, I'm too bored, so I'm like, I'll even like grab a book and start reading. Where I'm just like, I need something to happen.
I don't think it's decided like you've crossed the boredom, like into the red zone of boredom. Oh my god, I have to open a book. Like that's I can't. I mean, I don't read enough anymore, but I try
100%.
to every now and then.
Yeah, no. So that's one of the things where I'm like, when I hit that breaking point, like, so there's a whole thing I explained previously on one of our episodes where I'm like, I've started reading Marcus Aurelius, but I'm like, Marcus Aurelius is a really hard read and it requires contemplation. So I'm like, I can only go through a few pages at a time. So I'm like, I keep it handy. So I'm like, when I hit that breaking point, I'm like, I know exactly what to read because it will give me something to think about. You know, it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, no, I'm definitely the problem. I know this. It's me. It's so.
As long as you can get through the book eventually, right?
Yeah, well, that's the best. Like, it's one of those things where, like Greg was saying, I'm like, I enjoy doom scrolling, but I never feel better after it. Like, I may find some little nugget of, I'm like, oh, that's like, as I am a wealth of absolutely useless knowledge. So it's kind of one of those things where anybody can bring up a subject and I'm like, I know something about that. And they're like, how do you know everything? I'm like, I've been around before phones. Okay. I have an Encyclopedia Britannica and like, it's leather bound and beautiful. It's fun, you know? So I'm like, yeah, no, I had to search for things in my day. I'm like, Dewey Decimal was a real thing.
God.
Okay.
Wow.
Was it just Google it? You're like, oh,
right. I do want to say, in the last 4 months, I have almost entirely stopped doom scrolling, and it has done wonders for my mental health. And, but I still retain all that stupid knowledge. You'll notice Atlas says, XKCD. I'm like, oh yeah, the door. Like, it's none of that goes away. You could, if you stop doom scrolling today, I guarantee you could still get a Bachelor of Science in old web comics and stupid internet lore.
100%.
I mean, I'm aware of all internet traditions. That thing never goes away like that, And, so yes,
it's one of those. It's one of those things where I'm like, I know in myself that I'm like, I have just a horrible psychosis of fear of missing out. So I'm like, I don't sleep well, but at the same time, I'm like, there are things I could learn, and which I'm like, that's not healthy at all. So it's like I'll doom scroll through absolute garbage. But then like today I found it was on TikTok, which I hate going on TikTok because it definitely makes me feel like a pervert. It's like, young people, makes me uncomfortable. But I'll go through and I found like a daily sci-fi channel. And so it'll have like a little animation, but then it's just dictating a sci-fi story. And it's just cut into like 3-minute clips. And I'm like, they were actually really creative stories. And I was like, oh, and then like they had a little bit of a moral twist. And I was kind of like, I love that kind of stuff because that's someone's hard work that I'm like, that's you put in effort. And I'm like, I like recognizing that. But then you're like, bro, you're not even dancing well. Just get lost. Just keep going. I can't handle it. It's too much, right?
And I think that's right. And I think the key thing that you said, Dino, was the word learning. That was the thing. As long as you're learning something, look at this. If you're looking at it just to look at it, you're looking at it to deal with someone else, then it's just taking a toll on you. If you're not learning anything, like actually learning something, I learned this person is horrible. Like that's not learning, but it's to actually get some education or boost from it. That is so rare.
Yeah.
That's one of the few times I would recommend doing that. But wow, it's like I said, I can't say enough for how much not doom scrolling has helped. Just
super good for you.
Breathing easier.
Because it definitely puts you like, it's such a debilitating black hole.
Yes,
you don't even realize when you're like,
you have no idea.
I'm just gonna check out some.
Right. You're not at all in the moment anymore. Nope. You're not in your own head. You're yelling at somebody that's not there, that you're never going to talk to. Hopefully, God forbid you do respond to them online. But there's no good to it. No good to it. Unless, like I said, like you said, you're learning. You hit the pick 6 of this guy that's telling you the good stories buried beneath the muck.
Yeah, well, and that's like the
good stories buried beneath the muck.
Which is a great line. Like, let's be honest.
That's a great like album title.
100%.
Well, I came to LA originally to be a real writer, and then I ended up here. But yes,
and then you ended up in stand up. You poor bastard.
That it creeps out, but
it's and that's why I'm like, it's I only realized, like, I was talking with my wife about this, where it's like, because we were both doing it and we both know it's not good, but then also too, we found that our attention span was weaning and stuff. It's like, and then you kind of have to build it back up, where I'm like, okay, I watch 15-minute YouTube videos, and then I'm like, okay, then we start watching an episode of something where it's like an hour long, and then it's
there you go.
Then we're back to movies and stuff like that. And I'm like, like sometimes little bits of things is great, but when you just start doom scrolling, it just takes your attention span, just plummets to the ground, and you're like, that's not good for anybody.
And also on top of that, I think the other key word of what you just said there, Dino, was you and your wife. The two of you are doom scrolling. It's not just one person sitting there in a room, letting the anxiety rev into the red very deeply, without having another person there to partner that's on top of it. That's a different thing. You're doom scrolling with a partner or with someone you love. That's something else. But you're doing it alone. Get out and jump out the way. Yeah, break glass. The emergency is here.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And also, Zaragoza, I definitely agree. He does look weird without the staff. There's no question.
I had shaved.
I see Alex Trigger, and it looks fine to me. I don't know.
I had shaved for a Bob costume from Bob's Burgers,
which was fantastic. Okay. He did look
I bet.
Yeah. And then Katie told me, if you don't shave the mustache and start over like as one unit.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm leaving.
Oh, yeah. I don't.
Good enough reason. Yeah.
But did you take the time while you were shaving to go into like mutton chops, goatee, and like when you were shaving the mustache? Of course. Okay. Let's just make sure we're still. Yeah. I have all sorts of pictures like that, and my wife was like, "Why do you keep those?" I'm like, "This is hilarious."
You don't take the pictures. You do the thing, and you go, "Ha ha," and then that's it. That's the end. No. That's how you occupy yourself in the boredom of shaving. Shaving is like the most like. It's the watermark for boring stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things where I find it like, so my dad had a mustache, and he would shave every day, and like a couple times we would go to Florida and we would convince him not to shave, and then he would be like, "Oh, okay," did it for a few days, and then he's like, "I don't know, I'm shaving." And hilariously, like, I'm like, I have a full beard. I've enjoyed having full beard for years. And then I see guys who like can't grow a beard, but they just don't shave. So you're like, you have these straggly hairs. I'm like, listen, either have a beard or don't have a beard. But what you have is not a beard. So
evolution all of it. This is wrong. Yeah, get out of there. Yeah.
And then like the best part was like Atlas looked good with the mustache. Like he looked like Bob, and I'm like, that's a good mustache because you have to have a long upper lip to have a good mustache. I'm like, I don't have a long upper lip. So if I shave a non-handlebar mustache, people are like, that's super creepy. Also, you're gigantic. That's a no-no.
Yeah, but if he does shave into a handlebar mustache, his name automatically changes to Thaddeus, and you don't want that.
100%. And I'm like, oh, where are you from, old timer? Hello. So just immediately one of those things, right? So I'm good with just the full beard. It's just because that's. It's one of those things where I'm like, there was a time where I had a goatee, and I'm like, I look too aggressive, and I'm like, it's just not. And like, I was also very fat, so I'm just like, but I have nice dimples. I want to show them off. And my wife's like, just go for the full beard. It's just much better.
And also, you'll find it's easier to shave when you were heavier versus thin. I have cut myself shaving so many times once I lost the weight, to the point last week. I you can't see it anymore, mercifully, but I cut myself shaving, the worst I ever had in my life. Like before I was headed to the show, there was a brief moment of thinking, like, is the booker going to let me go on? Like it was so bad. Like it was like I had mozzarella sauce like right here for, I don't even know how I did it, for like 3 days. It was bizarre. And I'm using Harry's from Target. Like I'm not using some weirdo straight razor, some super electric thing. If you said, Greg, cut yourself this way for $2,000, I couldn't find a way to do like it. Just bizarre. Anyway, what I'm saying is, you guys. I mean, as someone that shaves every day and has since the 7th grade, because I'm not dealing with the beard. God bless you with the beards. Keep that going. That is a good thing. You guys are doing the right thing. That's what I'm saying.
It's okay. Like in regards to ad comedy shows, your time spent entertaining other people and by extension yourself is for however long your set is. For the rest of the time, what do you guys do? Do you talk to the people in the green room? Do you hang out like behind the building? Like what happens? Because I am not really much of a good networker. It's a flaw for myself, and like I try and be more sociable. But when I'm like at a show, if it's like a bigger show or like a show that I'm, it's a big deal for me, I tend to get a little like withdrawn. Like I'll be withdrawn. I'll go do my set, then I'll relax and talk to people.
100%. Yeah.
I mean, speaking for me, this is terrible. I just realized this as Atlas was talking. I mean, I fall too much into status games and being in my own head. I'm more easily in the flow of conversation if this person isn't famous or they've only had a special or a few things. But I bet, if I'm in the green room and it's 2 or 3 people that have been doing comedy for decades and they're on all kinds of TV and Netflix, I'm like, well, I'm just going to listen to them have a lengthy conversation about this band I know sucks. Like, I'm not joining in on that and how bad they are. Like, it'll be like nodding along in case someone wants, oh yeah, definitely that third album was a winner. Like, I'm not saying specifics. I'm not when anyone's listening, but this just happened to be like 2 weeks ago, and I'm sitting there thinking like, wow, if I was in this conversation in the back of a station wagon in 2003, I would have been yelling at these people, but they're famous and I'm not, so I'm sitting here eating my hummus, just nodding along. Yep, he's a great singer. Like,
Yeah, Pinkerton was the best album.
Okay.
I'm not saying the band, just in case. But I will say, if we were playing like hot or cold, you'd be getting warmer. That doesn't mean you're hot. You'd be getting warmer with that.
You know what? That is a fair point, and also too, like just last week on Thursday, I got through to the semifinals of a comedy competition up here in Toronto.
Hey,
and yeah, it was great. So I'm like, I went up, and this was the round. So this was the semifinal round, and only 2 people were getting through out of 10. And I was like, okay. So the last 2, I won the night. So I'm like, I even got $50, and I'm like, hey, that paid for booking.
Absolutely.
So it was very enjoyable, but also like, I was trying to incorporate stuff, so it was a little bit old, a little bit new and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You're always going to find that mix in this kind of showcase.
100%. So this time around, I did 6.5 minutes, all new material, and like it was front to back laughs. My wife was there, and she was like, "That was a really great set," and I was like, I was happy about it. And the thing was like, so in the same sense, I was in the green room, and people are chatting and everything, and I'm like, nope. Don't want to chat with anybody here. And like there was this build up in the same way where I'm like, especially like Atlas, so I'm like, before my set, I'm like, I just go over my set and I just start like I start second guessing myself, and I'm like, can I do this better? And then I'm like, the funny thing was I rewrote the entire set and then went out there and just started hitting it, and it was one of those times where like all cylinders hit, and I'm like, so I was tagging things on the fly, and everything stayed in order, and everything flowed. It was great. Like, if anything, like I was like just rock hard the whole time. I'm like, this is fantastic. So, but I'm like, afterward, then I could go out and watch, like, because I am super paranoid of watching other comics and going like, I've seen people do bits, and I'm like, I was working on something like that. Now I'll just immediately abandon it. I'm like, I'm not even gonna start, right? So I'm like.
And that's a better impulse than the alternative, that you have that and it speaks well of you.
Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, I never want someone to be like, hey, I did that bit, especially if somebody does it good, I'm like, well, just knock that off. I'm not even going to hit it, because I'm just like, no, that's fine. I'm like, there's always I was talking with somebody, and I'm like, listen, there's a very few ways that you can approach life. One of them is life is funny. And I'm like, well, I don't want life to be sad, because that's ridiculous. I don't want it to be, angry. I'm like, funny is a great alternative. And when you used to live as a one circle type person, I'm like, funny's where it's at. That's just, it's even last night we had a rap party for the event, and one person's like, I love how when somebody makes a dig at you, you go, eh. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Punch them in the face? I'm like, they'll die. I'm still gigantic. I'm like, I don't want to just,
there's a lot more downside for you.
Yeah, well, I'm good at digging holes, so I'm like, listen, no one will know. It's not gonna, but that's where I'm just like, if you can make a joke and make me laugh, and I'm like, I'm happy for it, right? So, because that's the one thing I'm like, if you can fat guy humor a fat guy, and I'm like, oh, good on you, but also too, now you'll see how bad this gets, and I'm like, that's when I'm like, and you're the target, and people are like, no, that's my entire self-worth, and I'm like, oh, it's gonna be gone really quick, because I hate myself even more, and the fact that I didn't come up with that joke, I'm gonna attack, and it's just one of those things. But I don't know. I too, like, I have a hard time. Like, I'm embarrassed when you're talking with comedians and they're like, oh, like, you'll see their set and you're going, that didn't go well, and they're like, oh, that was great, and you're like, oh yeah, good for you.
Right. We saw the same show, right? You were at the show you performed on. Yeah, I've done that.
Too many times people were like, I killed, and you're like, the audience, not the set there, bro. And you're kind of just going, you know what? I don't need to say anything. I can just walk away.
Oh yeah, there's no upside to that at all.
No, the only bad part is then, like, if I, like, for me, I'm older, and Greg, I'm sure you've experienced this, where I'm like, until I've had a conversation with somebody, or like, I won't make a friend request or anything. I'm like, that's not. I'm like, that feels weird.
Oh yeah, no. Right? And that's not networking, like Atlas said. That would just be weird to do that. I mean, so it's so that's like sticking your business card in someone's car. I mean, it's
exactly right. So I'm like,
and then they're like, how did you?
Oh,
it's in the cup holder. Like, you didn't even get that to the. That's impressive. Like,
right. Yeah.
And your card is just a comic. You're like, that's relevant to them. They're like, what?
It's an XKCD comic. No.
Yeah. So, like, that's why I'm like, if I see somebody that kills it, I'll walk up and be like, hey man, that was a great set. What's your socials? I'd like to follow you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
absolutely.
For me,
I always invite them onto this show usually.
No, that's smart. That's a good. You guys got a good idea with this. Yeah, my main podcast is about sports. This is much smarter. I got to start something like this. Good networking than you guys have.
But that's the best part. I'm like, we had one person who online was very funny and charismatic, and then they came on and they just like,
oh jeez.
And we're like, what do you think? They're like, I don't know. And you're like, what is happening right now? And you're like,
it's like,
okay, we'll just
I have to render my opinion here on this before I can post it in your stream.
Really sketchy. We're just like,
it was like, one of my cousins.
Oh,
Atlas, you froze.
I was gonna say, you were telling us about
your cousin is actually belonging to the CIA or the NSA.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
there you go. You're back.
So,
okay.
One of my cousins, when they were little, at family gatherings and like at school, they were, like, bright, excitable, like running all over the place, super crazy. And then, like, every time like a camera came out or people were looking at them.
Really?
Yeah, just quiet. It was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It was crazy. Which it comes down to stage fright, right? Like, that's obviously what it was.
Optimistic.
But yeah. But it's still funny to, like, see that be a thing, right?
Especially now, and that's everyone is on camera for somebody. I mean, whether it's on a podcast, it's for your grandma. I mean, all this stuff. Like,
we all know that grandma gets 20,000 viewers.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, we should do something kind. Yeah,
100%. Yeah. They're all named Ethel. Just every one of them is just, and Gertrude. It's fine.
Right. Yes, the name's died out. Yeah.
It's one of those things where you're like for me, I at a young age was trained to publicly speak. And I'm like, so like I was 12 years old and I did a talk in front of 1,000 people, and I was like, okay, but I'm like, it was that idea where you're like, they don't know if you've missed something. It doesn't just keep going, right? And like, I'll tell people, I'm like, hey, you understand that they don't know what the plan is. Only we know what the plan is. So if we change the plan on the fly, nobody cares. And they're just like, what? And I'm like, yeah, they don't know what's supposed to happen. So we could just do whatever we want. And they're just like, how is this possible? I'm like, what, you thought everyone knew? Nobody knows. Don't worry about it. Just run with it. And they're just like, oh, okay. And I'm like, is that not like, that's one of the weirdest things where it was like, be like, okay, can you talk about the subject? I'm like, yes, I can. It won't be accurate, but I will talk about it. And that's just we'll see what happens, you know?
Yes, and also I think just piggyback on top of what you're saying, Dino, because that's so correct, is that I think a lot of people with the stage fright that Atlas mentioned go into any kind of public speaking, whether it's stand-up or something or podcasting for whatever, is that they go into the idea that, oh, the audience doesn't like you, or you have to win them over, or they're trying to trip you up or something like that. Everyone just wants to enjoy whatever it is they're hearing. They are invested in having a good time regardless.
See, what I tell them, like the hardest part about like going to an open mic or free show is that you have to combat what their plans were.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's a paying, like people have bought a ticket, I'm like, they've done 90% of the work and they're begging for you to make them laugh. Like
they want to have a good time.
You need this much, that just a tiny bit of effort, and it works. And I'm like, they're like, please, I've given you money, just make me laugh, please. And then you're just like, so many times I've walked on stage, I'm like, oh, just I will open this. I'm like, if at any point during my set you feel like I'm looking down on you, I'll tell you immediately I am, because not only am I up here and you're not, but also I'm Greek, which makes me superior. So it's fine. And they're just like, what? And I'm like, yeah, let's go. And I'm like, and there's just me, they're like, this guy's a dick. And I'm like, yes, I am. That's fine.
And you've set the parameters. They know what your character is at that point. They know your persona. They know they can be safe with you. They know you can do the work. Yes, that's it is. I mean, that's the perfect introduction, which is all that opening should be. And you know,
we've talked about this on the show before, but one of the worst things about doing a free show is the show in a place where something else is also going on. Like, oh, we got the game on the TV in the back. We turned the sound off, so it's okay, right? You're like, no,
it's really not.
The free show that I put on 10 months a year out in Pasadena, they do have a TV, but you literally cannot see it from where the performance space is. Also, we're separated outdoor patio from inside. So, like, it's, I've caught a lot of breaks at the Del Pueblo Brewery. We're back in February. But yeah, but that's the kind of meticulous planning and lucky break that the free show requires for it to, because I've absolutely done that. Where, guys come, they're wearing the jerseys, they're going to watch the game. You are literally ruining their good time.
Exactly.
I mean, that's no matter how funny you are. Like,
we had, I remember doing a show outside the city at a bar, and the Raptors were in the playoffs for basketball. And I was like, listen, guys, I'm like, if they win, nobody wants to hear comedy. If they lose, they really don't want comedy. And then the guy's like, you know what? We'll wait 5 minutes. And I'm like, bro, you should have canceled the show. Okay. It's not even, and like, they would pay every performer. You got a free drink, which I'm like, that's fine. I'm like, it's just down the road. It's not a big deal. But at the same time, I'm like, hey, these people could give a shit if we just died right here. Like, they are here for the game exclusively, And to the point where there's like, hey, can you guys keep it down? And we're like, the game's not even on anymore, bro. This is not a good thing.
Right. You're listening to post game. I mean, that was not a guaranteed part of the experience. Yes.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that I'm like, don't compete with yourself for someone else's benefit. You're like, none of that is
exactly. And that's part of the planning that goes into being a show producer. You have to be aware of those things. You have to take that all into account. It's not just, well, we've got the venue tonight, we're putting up the mic and let's put on a show, gang. No. You have a responsibility to these people and to those who come in.
I did a Zoom show while January 6th was happening.
Wow, I was on a lot of Zoom shows at inopportune times. I think that may be me.
That is aggressive. That is an aggressive.
And like, it wasn't during my set, but during someone else's. They're like, so hey, sorry to interrupt, but the Capitol is being attacked. We're like, what? And we're like, everyone drops everything and like, yeah.
So dating is hard.
Yeah, dating is hard.
My mom's weird. Like, it should just come back in there.
Just take the L, dude. Like,
like it's weird that people are like, no, we're okay. You're like,
I'm a professional. Yeah, I'm gonna do it.
We're physically okay, but this is way more fucking interesting. Like,
like just
that would be like, okay, I was in school during 9/11, and like they made a big point of like wheeling into TVs, like this is history. It would have been really funny if like I'm sure at least one teacher is like, okay, we're gonna get in our reading groups now. Like no.
Yeah.
The math test is still tomorrow. You kids are learning fractions.
Yeah. I was in college and I'm like, I pulled up and I'm like, hey, does everyone, because like I was on the way to my college and I'm like, I hear it on the radio and I'm like, bro. And then they're like, yeah, we're not sure of. I'm like, everything should be canceled. Trust me, this is insane. And then it's like, then we watched the rest of the event and you're just like, yeah. People are like, are you going to class? And I'm like, I'm going home. And I'm not even sticking around here to drink myself stupid. I'm like, I'm just, which college age, like that's I'm just gonna get drunk. Yeah, but
there was like some tweet. I can't remember who said it, but it was like we're gonna be 4 horsemen deep into the apocalypse and still going to work. Like, why are you late? Well, like a lake of fire swallowed the freeway. I feel like you're not being a team player, Jim.
Like,
but you should have posted that on Slack. We could have used the screen.
Like, Google will reroute you in those kind of scenarios.
Exactly.
Maybe
not everywhere was a lake of fire. Yeah. I mean, you look at the highway.
Yes, well, it's one of those things. People need to be be considerate.
No. What about us that did get to work? We shouldn't have.
Yeah. It's I definitely love how the fact that some people they're just like, well, I was here on time, and you're like, hey, no, just shut it. Right. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Look, if you're at work and you're bored, solitaire exists. Leave the rest of us alone. Like,
I mean, I never did that. Does that work for boredom? I mean, I know we had a topic that we got away from, which is totally fine.
Oh no, that's the whole show is that we start with something and it goes where it goes.
Oh well, which is so much better. But I never played solitaire. I never. I had aunts that did. I think my grandmother did. I never did it. I played plenty of video games, which is
solitaire is like, I willingly accept boredom and I will continue this. And you're like, it's not. I don't even think solitaire comes on new computers, to be honest. It's not even. Yeah,
so like some offices still have like are running on like Windows XP or some shit. Like,
I would like to see somebody bust out like an actual deck of cards and be like, I'm just playing some solitaire, and just he's just like, that is a hard pass there, friend.
He's like sitting there with the physical cards, being like, hey, it's better than ski free, That Yeti ain't getting me this morning.
Listen, and the worst part is somebody will be like, hey, we can play Crazy Eights instead. You're like, absolutely not. I'm playing solitaire.
Right, exactly.
Demand to play by myself.
I'll pull it out this time. No, you got
fantastic. Yeah, it's one of those things where I definitely feel that like you can be a passenger or a driver in your own existence, but some people are like, nope, I'm not driving and I choose not to. And you're like, well, that's just gonna turn around and bite you eventually, right? It's just why with boredom. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, I think you're so right about that, but I do think, as we've kind of shown and proven here today, is that you can be a passenger, without being aware of it, but in a long enough timeline, you can take the wheel. Maybe not in every aspect, but in many.
And that's the hilarious part. Like I've walked up to people at this point, and actually we went on a trip earlier this year, and I walked up to a guy and I'm like, hey man, and he's like, how can I help you? Because he was working, and I was like, it's Dino. And he's like, oh my god, and I was like, I'm like, oh, thank you so much, I'm so gorgeous, thank you. But at the same time, I'm like, that's been happening, and it's like people are like, how did you're half the person you were, and I'm like,
oh yeah,
it was wild. But
I made a poor decision.
Exactly, but it's one of those things where you're going, yeah, at any point in time you could just reach over and grab the wheel. I feel like that's
sooner beats later, just to throw that out there. But yes, but doing it period is what matters. Yeah,
and it's one of those things where you're like, I feel like a lot of people don't realize how in control we have the choice of being. Right? Like just fair. In general, where you're just going, yeah, you could just choose to do something different. Like for the longest time, like I remember I had lost my job 2017 and I was doing nothing, and my wife's like, you always want to do comedy, why don't you give it a try? And I was like, all right. And sure enough, I was like, oh, I love this. this. And it was one of those things where I'm like, I'm so much funnier than people. And it was, which is not true, but
I just love the idea of you walking out of like a coffee shop or a bar or something and then just shouting to them, I'm so much funnier than people. Finally!
I can't say that hasn't happened. I'll be honest with you. I'm hilarious. You should all know this.
See,
you look up at the sky and say it like a bunch of crows fly away from a nearby building.
Yeah, it was one dove just came out. I'm like, I'm hilarious. Here you go. Just definitely one of those things. Yeah, that's good.
Sings a song, sounds like she's singing.
It's the weirdest experience of my life. I'm just gonna say it, and I'm just like, it started with comedy, and I'm like, it has only gotten weirder. It's just one of those things. But well, this has been fantastic.
Yes, it has. I'm so glad you guys had me on this morning.
Where can everyone find you?
You can find me at Greg Benevent there. My B as in boy, E-N-E, V as in Victor, E-N-T. It's a deceptively difficult name. It seems like it'd be easy. It's not. It's been an event. I'm on Instagram. I try to stay there. I feel the least easy to become toxic social media platform. They all are, but that one perhaps has a few more life preservers and buoys on it than others. And and my podcast I do with Cal Christ once a week called What Yin's Talking About, and do that as well. And if you're in the LA area, I'm at Flappers in Burbank on Saturday nights, 7 to 9 p.m. and the Del Pueblo Brewery in Pasadena in February. So so all those things. But this this was a hoot. So glad I came on.
All that will also be down in the show notes / description.
Sure.
For people. You can find us at Generation Dan, Twitter, Instagram, wherever or all that good stuff. Where can they find you? Do you know?
Dina the Genetic Marvel. It's just one of those things. Also, too, I really, really, really want Greg to start a podcast just called Benevent. And I'm like, I feel like that is like, it's a Benevent. And you're like, it just kind of two birds with one stone. I
might remember that. I'll kick that, Dino.
It's a Benevent, or like name your first album that.
Definitely. Just like,
my cousin is a man, so he's in show business too. I don't want to take it from him. But I'll remember that.
Absolutely. Come on. Yeah. And Atlas, where can they find you?
You can find me at Atlas Novak, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. Follow my YouTube channel, The Epileptic Comic, which is short sketches about what it's like to have epilepsy, among other things. You can also check out my other podcast, At Nexus at Nights, which is about a trading card game called Vanguard. And if you don't like it, I completely understand because it's nerdy. So,
but maybe it's your passion and you didn't even know it.
That could be.
Maybe it is. It's better than solitaire. I'll say that.
100%
So, thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you next time. Leave a like, leave a comment. Bye, everyone.